Well, welcome to the webinar, everybody. My name is Jeff Orton. I'm the chair of the CalGIS conference for 2014. What we're going to do today is I'll give you a little update on the conference to get started, and then where we'll go is we'll go to our first speaker, who will go for about 25 minutes or so, maybe a half an hour, and then we'll take a couple questions before she's done, and then go on to our second speaker. If you have any questions, you're welcome to type them in the questions box. I'll try to get to them as we go along. If things look a little strange with some of us, we're doing the webinar thing where we're looking at our screens and not at the camera all the time. So, all right, to get started, let me switch over to this PowerPoint. The CalGIS conference, for those of you who have followed our other webinars, is going to be taking place in April of 2014 in Monterey. If you haven't had a chance to go to the calgis.org website yet and see the information about the conference, please have a chance to go and do that. We try to put all the information there where you can get at it in one place. So the conference is going to be going April 14th through 16th. That's a Monday through Wednesday of that week, of that month. And what we're going to do is we're going to have, I think, a pretty good schedule, a pretty good program coming up. Let me switch over to the updates page. So the conference updates there's not a huge number of them right now. We're in the kind of the lull before we really hit the real work of the conference, getting everything finalized. But just so everybody knows, we had a couple of changes. On Monday of the conference, there's going to be 3 workshops. The Marine GIS workshop, we're actually lowering the price on that a little bit, down to $15, just to cover our expenses for the conference, for the workshop, I should say. There's some extra charges that we have for internet connections and such. That one is going to be hosted by the Monterey Bay Area Marine GIS User Group, and we expect people from all over the state to participate in that. It's going to be kind of a combination of presentations. It's almost like a mini conference within a conference, and there will be some additional workshop pieces from people at the state. We also will have an ESRI ArcGIS online workshop. I think this is going to be kind of interesting. The ESRI people are trying to put together, so they'll talk to us about it'll be a whole day. You'll have your computers there. In fact, that's one of the things we'd like to encourage everybody is to bring your laptops for these workshops. You'll be able to work on the story maps, the ArcGIS online training, the story maps, and then by the end of the day you should have created a story map, and those will be there'll be a bit of a competition for everybody who's interested in participating, with the winners receiving fabulous prizes. And we'll figure out what those prizes are later on. Then there will be an open source workshop. That is going to be, there will be 2 companies who are bringing their staff in. The first is Boundless. They used to be known as OpenGeo. And they're going to be talking about the kind of the OSGeo suite of tools. PostGIS, GeoServer, they'll be talking about QGIS. The specific format of that day is still being put together, and in fact I was talking with some of those people this morning about this. The second group is some people coming in from Mapbox, and they're going to be talking to us about OpenStreetMap and also a little bit about the Mapbox tools and TileMill. So it should be kind of an interesting thing. We may end up, if we have enough content and enough people involved, we may end up splitting the afternoon into 2 different workshops on that day, so that if you have more of an interest in one area or the other, you can have a little bit of a deeper dive in that. On Monday, there's also going to be the State GIS User Group meetings, CGIA board meetings, and the ERISA chapter meetings. That's coming together well. I was speaking with Christina Boggs with the State GIS User Group, and for those people who aren't able to be at the conference, she's going to try to have a phone line available for you. But we would encourage everybody in the State GIS User Group to come to the conference if they can. And like I said, there's going to be dinner at Cannery Row Brewing Company that night for all the conference attendees. And so we'd hope you'd come and join us. We looked to have a good time there. The conference updates, there's 4 featured speakers. We confirmed the last speaker this week. Our featured speakers are going to be Jack Dangerman from ESRI, Mike Magursky from Code for America, Eric Gunderson from Mapbox, and Dylan Lorimer, who's with Google. I've already talked at previous webinars about the other 3, or the first 3, but Dylan is you can see a little bit of his bio or his background information on the website, calgis.org, but you'll also be able to see some of the stuff that he's doing with the Google Map Engine and some of those items. There are some upcoming deadlines, and these are really important. We really want to hear from you at the conference. I'm part of the team putting together the program for the conference, and we always like to receive a large number of presentation papers or presentation proposals from various people around the state. Sometimes people don't think that they're doing anything interesting. But what I found is that most people have something really interesting to say. And what we're going to try to do is have a mix of different formats of your presentations this year. Some will be lightning talks, 5 to 7 minute talks. Some will be a little bit longer, 10 to 15 minute talks, and a few will be full half-hour plus talks, just depending on what you think that how you might fit best. So almost every one of you have something that you can tell us in 5 to 10 minutes, even if you don't think that you have a long presentation to do, that you can talk to us about one thing that you're doing, and it would be very interesting. Also, early registration ends the end of this month, so if you want the discount, or if you are a potential sponsor of the conference, a vendor who would like to come and exhibit at the conference, the deadlines for the early registration for both of those areas end December 31st. We'd really like you to get that information in as soon as possible, especially for the presentations, because we're going to be working over the holidays and over the first couple weeks of January to get the program finalized so we can post it online and have everybody an idea of what they're going to be registering for. And that is all of the information I'm going to give you regarding the update for the conference. If you haven't had a chance to see much about the conference, please jump in and go to the calgis.org website. Follow us on our Twitter account, which is, I believe the hashtag is CalGIS. Let me go back to the beginning. Yep, the hashtag is CalGIS. So you can follow us on Twitter and have an opportunity to see what's going on. Right now, we have a good number of people have joined the webinar. We have looks like about 100 and 140 people connected up at this time. Something like that anyway. So what we'll do is we'll get started right now by bringing in Amy Smith. And Amy, you want to turn your mic and your camera on? Here she comes. Hello, Amy.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to change the presenter and make you the presenter for right now.
Okay.
All right. So you can share your screen. All right. So Amy has very graciously offered to come in and share her presentation regarding Python with us. It was interesting when I was talking to her the other day that one of Amy's first exposures to Python in any significant way was a few years ago at the CalGIS conference when we did a workshop on Python. And so now she's
That's right, impressive.
taking the ball and run with it, huh? And so now you're ready to teach us something. Okay, so what I'm going to do, Amy, I'm going to mute my speakers and turn my camera off and let you do your presentation. Okay. If anybody has any questions, please enter them in the questions box, and we'll try to get to them. If it's important, if they're hit right at that moment, we'll get through them during the body of her presentation. If not, we'll save them to the end. Okay, Amy? Take it away.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jeff, and also special thanks to the Northern California chapter of ERISA for tuning me into these webinars. I think they're great. A few months ago, Jeff got in touch with me to talk about Python for today's webinar, which I'm always happy to talk about. It's one of my favorite things. For those of you who aren't familiar with Python, it's a general-purpose scripting language, and it can be a very powerful GIS tool, although it's certainly not limited to do just GIS at all. So today I'm going to talk about some of the ways that I found Python useful in my day-to-day GIS workflows as a GIS specialist working in transportation. Python can be a great tool to incorporate into your GIS workflows. It's really useful for automating workflows that you do frequently. It's flexible and it can be combined with other tools out there to create custom applications. And it can be a way to share GIS functionality with a broader audience online too. I'm going to go through some examples of how Python has been helpful for me and my colleagues here at Fair & Peers in the form of things like field calculations in ArcGIS, or standalone scripts for processing large data sets, custom script tools for use in ArcGIS Desktop, and geoprocessing services shared using ArcGIS per server. Looking at field calculations, there's probably a lot of overlap in terms of what you can do with VB script and Python. I just happen to be most familiar with Python, so it's my scripting language of choice. In any case, here's an example of a field calculator that assigns random values between 0 and 10 to a field. And this is a particular calculation that was used when someone came and requested that we just create some temporary data to develop a process before the actual data arrived. So it gave us a chance to develop a script with some sample information. And in this field calculation, we're replacing text in a field containing street names. A common request that I get with street labels is to reformat them so that they're cohesive with other maps or reports. And if you're working with a pretty large map of an entire city or a county and you have lots of street names to display, you're definitely not going to want to go through each one and update them manually. And here's an example of the use of the code block in a field calculator. If you work with census data, you're probably familiar with the process of joining tabular data, such as demographic information, to your census geography using some sort of common ID. Some reformatting of the IDs could be necessary, and in my experience usually is, in the case especially that your geography and tabular data use different field types for that join ID. This example, it converts a numeric ID to a text ID and adds a 0 if the state zip code is a single digit. Without that preceding 0 in the ID, the tables wouldn't join properly. And if I wanted, I could save this expression and load it back in later if I needed. So if you're working with both spatial and non-spatial data formats, handling large amounts of data, standalone scripts can be really helpful. This is an example where I was given around 1,000 text files, each containing GPS data with travel speed information. I was asked to process the data so that each file could be visualized in a map with the speed-based color coding. Standalone scripts were used to read in the text files and perform a spatial analysis that calculated average speeds along roadway segments. Using the ArcPy mapping module, which is a way that you can automate things like your layout in ArcGIS and exporting maps to PDF. These maps were created for each of those individual text files and named according to date, time, and direction so that they could be easily sifted through by the engineers that were using them to help inform their models. So when all was said and done, they had a directory of all of these PDF maps, and if they needed to refer to what the travel speeds were on a particular date or time, they could easily find it. And another great aspect of standalone scripts is that they can use a combination of default Python tools and outside libraries developed by other people. A colleague of mine put together this great script that downloads NextBus GPS data as a text file. And if you're not familiar with NextBus, they provide what's known as automatic vehicle location data that can be used to track buses in real time. After downloading the data, I wrote a series of scripts that use ArcPy in conjunction with SciPy and NumPy. And I keep mentioning ArcPy. I should explain that if you haven't used ArcPy before, it's the library from ArcGIS that lets you bring in any of the geoprocessing suite of tools from ESRI. And SciPy and NumPy, which are handy modules, outside modules for calculating statistics and doing some other types of operations. And then it also uses XLWT, which is a module that can be used to write Excel files. So the script, it calculates travel statistics using that bus data that was downloaded, and it writes the outputs to Excel files with some color coding in the cells based on the values, and also produces shape files for mapping and visualization. So we're able to display this data in a tabular form as well as in the form of maps. So sometimes standalone scripts really do the trick. That might be all you need, but they might not be great if you're looking to share tools with other GIS analysts who aren't familiar with programming. Script tools in ArcGIS can be used to bring those standalone scripts into the ArcGIS desktop environment. So if you're working with ArcGIS desktop users, that might be a nice option. And then users can define their own parameters and their own inputs to the tool. The Placer County Segment Analysis tool that you see some screen captures here, it's a custom collision analysis script tool that was developed for planners using GIS at the county's transportation planning department. The tool uses ArcGIS geoprocessing tools such as linear referencing, other types of spatial joins, and it assesses collisions along roadway segments and provides this symbolized output showing the user where the highest rates of collisions were recorded in the point-based shapefiles representing collisions that the user provides. So this tool was used in the process of writing applications for highway safety grants. So folks at the county were using this tool to take their collision data and find roadway segments that had high rates of collisions. And the county received several grants to make roadways safer, which is great. They mentioned that before they were using a manual review process of just sifting through the collisions in other software, and it was a pretty time-consuming process. So this saved them a lot of time, and it helped them communicate the results to you. Taking the idea of this custom script tool a step further, custom tools developed with Python can be shared online. And so if you're working with an audience that doesn't use GIS or doesn't have access, this is kind of a nice option. Here at Farron Piers, where I work, a lot of us use ArcGIS, so ArcGIS for Server became the logical next step for us when we wanted to start sharing our tools and data online. That said, there's really a bevy of ways Python can be used for web development. I went to the Python conference in Santa Clara last year, and I saw things that people were doing with Python that were just above and beyond what I even knew it could do. So there's a lot out there. This screenshot you see here is a screen capture of the Laguna Ridge Dynamic Trips tool that I helped develop. And it's a web mapping tool that allows the user to define some inputs such as household, office, and retail information for project areas and run an analysis to see how new developments might affect traffic patterns in the area. So the example of the Laguna Ridge Dynamic Trips tool, and it was developed for a city here in California doing some planning. It was built first as an Excel spreadsheet by one of our modelers, and I took the logic from his spreadsheet and converted it to a standalone Python script. And from there it became a custom ArcGIS desktop script tool and finally, a geoprocessing service that could be used in a web mapping application. So that's just kind of the workflow of how it finally ended up on the web. This is a screen capture of the Analyze window in that tool, which will run the Python analysis on the server when the user clicks the Submit button. The output is a symbolized layer showing the traffic volume and areas, intersections that might need signals based on some criteria. Okay, well, hopefully this touched on some of the great ways Python can be used with GIS. If you're just getting started with Python, there's some great resources you might want to check out, some good books, and a wealth of information online. Some web maps in particular that I've used quite a bit are the Code Academy, which has more than just Python. It has a lot of different languages that you can learn. I'm using it right now to learn some JavaScripting. Stack Overflow is a fantastic website. Oftentimes if I'm looking for a solution and I ask a really specific question and do a search, someone has almost always asked the same question on Stack Overflow, and you can find exactly what you're looking for. And to close things up, and in case you needed more reasons why I think Python is awesome, and hopefully it'll win you over too, it's just great for efficiency, sharing your workflows with others, and it can be combined with a lot of other tools out there to make these really powerful, effective tools. And there's a fantastic user community online that's very supportive, and a lot of folks just geared towards helping each other out. So thanks everyone, and Jeff, if anyone has questions, feel free to ask now, or if you want to get in touch with me by email after the webinar, feel free to email me.
Okay, I'm back on. Great. So why don't we do this? I'll ask a couple questions, and then anybody else, if you want to type in the question box, we have a few minutes to ask some questions and see what's going on. Maybe I could start with the first question. As you got started into with the class and started getting into Python, did you have a background in programming or development when you got started?
Yes, a little bit. I was self-taught, but I had done a lot of work with MATLAB. So I had learned just general programming logic. By the time I started Python, it was just a matter of learning the new syntax.
Okay. Somebody here asked the question, basically, did you learn it on your own? Did you take any classes, and what your background was? So maybe if you could expand on what you just told us.
Sure. Yeah, well, the way I learned programming in general was in grad school. I had a very, very good patient programmer friend who did a lot of my coding for me at first, and I just kind of watched him. And eventually, over time, I picked things up. I've never taken a formal class, but I did take the one-day seminar at the CalGIS conference probably about 5 years ago now, and that was pretty helpful. We were sent home with a key drive that had some example scripts that I could then take and sort of tweak for my own uses and test out different things.
Okay. Another question here. First, somebody asked if you can go back to your resources page. Okay, just a second. There was a couple of questions for that. Let's see. She asked. Somebody asked here. Just a second. Their questions are coming in faster than I can read here. So, so the first thing was, is there a way to create Python scripts to do geoprocessing on SDE layers using versioning? I'm a novice, and how would I start?
Well, I know that it's possible using non-versioned SDE databases. That's actually the example of the Laguna Ridge map that I showed. It connects to an SDE database on a SQL server. I don't imagine that versioning would not let you do that. But I've never tried it out myself, and I don't know, maybe our ESRI fellow on the line would help with that.
Well, we'll ask Rob here in just a minute, and he can. I'm sure he can give us a little clue. He's probably well into this. Let's see. There's somebody made a comment that a really good way to learn Python is by creating a model in Model Builder, then exporting that to a Python script.
Yeah. See, I'm not super savvy with Model Builder, so. And I don't usually follow that workflow, but I have worked with people who Model Builder is, for them, second nature with GIS, and they have found it really helpful to export the scripts and look at them in Python.
Okay. Somebody else asked the question, how did you get the GP model from ArcMap into the web application, generally speaking?
Generally speaking, it is a Python script that was brought in as a script tool using ArcGIS 10.1, ArcGIS for server. You can go through a process of running your script tool and then looking at the results and actually sharing the geoprocessing service from your results. And from there you have to go through setting some other parameters to eventually turn it into a geoprocessing service that can be consumed either in ArcMap, but also in web applications.
Okay. For a couple of you have asked some information about, will the PowerPoint be available? We do record these webinars, so you'll be able to go back and watch her presentation on the recording. It will be posted to calgis.org after we're done here, or as soon as I get it. Make sure there's no problems with the audio or video before we post it up. Okay, here's another question. The question was, which Python IDE would you recommend?
I'm a big IDLE fan. It's pretty simple. It's a basic Python text editor. I know there are others out there, but I've always kind of stuck with that one. It does the trick for me.
Okay. Somebody here commented, a great presentation, Amy. So, let's see. Somebody asked the question, and maybe you can talk to this. I'm not sure if this person has a background in GIS or not, but the question is data warehousing used in the field of GIS?
Data warehousing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know what that term means.
Okay, well, we can, maybe if anybody else would like to throw in their comment on that, we can share it with the group. The person said like spatial data warehousing. So maybe let me ask the next question here. Do you have, well, somebody said here that they use Model Builder all the time, to Model Builder to Python all the time. And somebody asked the question, do you have any comments on, quote, learning Python the hard way, close quote. So I wasn't sure if that was if that was referred to a book or if that was referring to just the process of self-training and going through that.
Well, if it's a book, I've never heard of it. If you're teaching yourself and you're running into problems,
Well, I guess it's
say
it's an online book. So.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, hopefully it's a helpful book.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of good resources out there for Python. Did you find any specific of these sources to be the most valuable for you?
For me, I tend to learn best by just trying and trial and error. So I would say my biggest suggestion for learning and trying to find resources is find a task, try to pull it off, and if you run into problems, go online and do some clever Google searching, and you'll probably come across someone who's asked the same question before.
Okay. By the way, somebody mentioned here that Learning Python the Hard Way is, I guess it's an online book or class, and the book is free and the videos are $30. So, and somebody else here, John Hickok, said that it's a class and he's part of the way through this right now. Have you used this book? Somebody asked the question, have you used the book, an ESRI book on scripting ArcGIS, Python scripting for ArcGIS?
I haven't used that.
Okay.
No.
So it sounds like there's quite a variety of stuff out there. I know when we had James Fee on our first webinar, one of the things that he commented was that he thought that Python was the best scripting language out there right now. Have you used any other scripting languages recently, and how would you give a comparison of learning Python?
Well, I guess coming from a MATLAB background, I think Python's a little bit easier to use. It's a little more user-friendly. You don't have to declare variable types and that sort of thing. It's a little bit cleaner. I'm happy I learned MATLAB first, but I'm also pretty happy that I use Python now.
Somebody here, Christina Boggs, sent her love out to you and says you're doing a great job. So, okay, well, is there anything else you'd like to share for the group here as we wrap it up?
No, I'm happy that we had so many questions, and if people want to send me more questions, they're more than welcome to.
Let me ask you real quick. There's a question here. What is your background in GIS as far as education?
I got my bachelor's and master's in geography at the University of Miami, and that program has a pretty strong GIS element, so I focused heavily on GIS, in particular with remote sensing and space-based radar imagery analysis. Okay.
The question, I guess, was, and maybe we throw this out to the group too, are there any good grad programs in geospatial that people are familiar with here in the state of California? I know it's kind of difficult to throw that on your lap, but do you have any you're up in the Sacramento area? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I know that American River College offers a lot of GIS classes and even Python programming classes with Nathan Jennings, who wrote the Python primer for ArcGIS.
Okay. Somebody else commented here, one of our group commented that that Python scripting for ArcGIS is a great book and has a lot of samples and exercises that people can learn. So I hope, as we probably run out of time now for Amy's presentation, we got a lot of feedback. I didn't read everybody's things, but there was lots of great job. We loved the webinar and loved your presentation. So thank you so much for participating today. If anybody has any additional questions, somebody asked the question, what was your thesis?
My thesis? Oh, it's kind of a mouthful. I don't even know if I remember the whole thing. It had to do with space-based radar imagery analysis of delineating water levels in the Florida Everglades.
Wow. I know. That's one of the great things about master's theses is you're supposed to have big, long titles, and you have to have colons in there to break things up. So, well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
we appreciate it. And we hope to see you at the conference this year. We actually had a couple people say you ought to teach a class this year at the conference. So if you happen to want to do a presentation teaching people about Python, let us know. Okay, with that, well, thank you. And I'm going to switch the presenter over to Rob Elkins. And Amy, I'll turn your camera off and your mic off, and you're welcome to hang around if you'd like to continue listening. So, hello, Rob, you there? Oops, your mic is off here. Oh, hang on a second. Rob, can you try your mic here and see if you're there? Oh,
Sure.
there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All
All right, I'm going to delete this big long list of questions for Amy and comments. Now, anybody who wants to comment or ask questions of Rob, please feel free to throw them in there, and we'll try to get to your questions as we go along. So now, let me introduce Rob just a little bit. Rob has been working for ESRI for how many years now?
About 15.
About 15 years. I met Rob first down at the ESRI user conference. There was an LDS GIS group that meets occasionally down there and kind of get together and talk about things a little bit, have some pizza and such, and Rob's hosted that a couple times. But we would like to, I met him down there, and I thought that perhaps Rob would be a great speaker for this. I know that so many of us out here are users of ESRI's technology, and I know there's been a lot of discussion for the last few years about the web stuff, which is great, but I sit down in front of the desktop software every year, or every day I should say, and knowing what's going on with the desktop, where things are, the direction they're going, is important for me. And there was some stuff discussed last year's user conference that people had some questions about, and so we invited Rob to kind of tell us where things are, and perhaps we can ask him some questions. He told us we have to keep off limits. He's not going to tell us pricing on anything because that's not his job. So anyway, Rob, why don't you take it over, and I'm going to mute myself and turn my webcam off.
All right, well, thanks. It's great to be a part of the CalGIS series of webcasts here leading up to your great event. It sounds like a wonderful conference. As Jeff mentioned, I've worked for ESRI since 1998 in our product management group, working on a couple different products, but mostly related to our desktop technology. And so I work with our product management team, the group that's building the products. And as was mentioned, ArcGIS means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And there's been a lot of talk about web and ArcGIS Online, and now more on devices. But I'm going to focus a little bit on the desktop, the traditional desktop. And I want to say that that's a key aspect to ArcGIS. And we're continuing to do a lot of development and research because we believe that it really powers the rest of the system. It makes authoritative content. This is where you, the GIS professionals, manage, maintain, and update this authoritative content that can then be shared to many different people through the web, through devices, and through more and more new ways to disseminate information to empower other parts of your organization. So I wanted to just give you a brief update of where we are today, and then as Jeff mentioned, where we're going with some new exciting things next year. So we've got 10.2 that's available now. We've seen strong uptake and adoption of that. This was a minor release for ArcGIS for desktop. Server, it was a little bit bigger for server, but it was a minor release for desktop, and we've seen a lot of good success on that release that happened in July. We are done with, and we are just finishing the distribution of ArcGIS 10.2.1. So we no longer are doing service packs. We're doing these updates to releases. So this .1 update has quality fixes like a Service Pack 1 would, but it also has a few new features, support for offline mapping, creating packages that you can then provision to your iPad or to an Android phone for a custom solution with ArcGIS Runtime. We added a few new geoprocessing tools, some of the big ones around conflation tools. Those old ArcInfo Workstation conflation tools are now part of the product. Also, some new tools are updated to support geodesic measurements and some improvements in LiDAR and some other scientific data. At the same time that we were doing that, we're working on 10.2.2. So think of this as Service Pack 2, a kind of a quality update which will put us in sync in the second quarter of next year with some of the updates to ArcGIS Online and to other parts of the platform. But really the big thing is this next major version of ArcGIS. And some people are calling this version 11. That it most likely will be version 11, but we're not ready to put a number on it and start printing t-shirts or brochures yet. So it's just so there'll be a new big version of ArcGIS in the second half of 2014. The big thing there is that we're adding a new application to ArcGIS for desktop. So right now you have desktop. In ArcGIS for desktop, there's ArcMap, Catalog, Scene, and Globe, and we'll add a new application that we call ArcGIS Professional. or for short, ArcGIS Pro. So that's what I figured I would take most of my time to talk about, give you a little bit of a sneak peek. We haven't talked very openly about this. We did show it in a Road Ahead session at the user conference, and there's a video out there that you can find to actually see it. But just briefly, this is a new desktop application. Being part of ArcGIS for Desktop means that all of you as ArcGIS for Desktop customers at version 11 will get this new application, and it runs side by side with the other parts of desktop. When we think about what we wanted to accomplish here, one of the things is that, you know, ArcMap was designed in the mid to late 90s, and we've gotten lots of enhancement requests. We've been able to add some of those to the releases over the last 10 years, but many things, it's just the architecture of ArcMap prohibits us from keep adding more and more functionality to it. So we've tried to do the best we could in enhancing ArcMap, but it came to a point where we needed to introduce a new application that was going to be based on your user requirements. So I want to highlight a few of those that are kind of the foundational pieces of this release. The first thing is that it's just one application. So you get 2D and 3D viewing and your catalog data management capabilities in one application. You'll also notice in this screenshot is that you can have multiple windows, multiple views all open at the same time. So a scene, a globe, and a 2D map. We've totally re-engineered the display engine for ArcGIS Desktop and with this new Pro application. So it's built on a much more modern architecture. It's all 64-bit, multi-processor. It's a multi-threaded application, meaning that you have a much more responsive application, meaning if you press a button, you no longer have to wait for that function to execute before you can do something else. We're going to leverage all the processors on your machine to be able to keep the application working and alive. Part of this new display engine, we're leveraging DirectX or OpenGL and the graphics card as much as possible to get you a much faster, smoother panning and zooming and map drawing. Also, this application can run totally disconnected or in a secure environment, but it is built for and ready to be the software plus services. So it can connect and leverage enhanced functionality when you're connected to ArcGIS for Server or ArcGIS Online, and is really designed for that in mind. ArcMap, when it was built, there was no online. There wasn't a lot of cloud services, if any, happening in the late 90s. As I mentioned, 64-bit multi-threaded, meaning this application will only be supported on 64-bit operating systems, Windows 7 or higher. So that will be Windows 7, 8, and 8.1 at its first release. We've improved the user interface, we think, with this ribbon contextual experience. This is similar to Office 2010, 2013. And what I really like about it is based on what you're doing, the application knows what you're doing. So if you got a map window active, then it gives you the tools that you need for working with the map. Now, all of these enhancements that I'm talking about are new features of this new application, ArcGIS Pro. These things are not part of ArcMap. There'll still be an ArcMap version 11, but it'll basically be the same ArcMap that we know now, just with minor improvements and enhancements to maintain compatibility. Instead of using a map document, we're going to actually go back to a project. So many of you may remember ArcView 3 had projects where you can have multiple maps, multiple layouts, all stored in one project. You'll also be able to store your scripts and models and layers and other metadata all within this project. Projects, of course, can be collaborative and can be worked on by many people. There'll be all of your map authoring, high-end cartography, great map layout and export. There'll also be editing capabilities, so professional editing of 2D and 3D at the same time, even in one map project. And as we've looked at the user interface, we've wanted to enhance it and to improve it and simplify where possible, but we haven't just redesigned everything just for the sake of redesigning it. So many of the same experiences of, if you're experienced with ArcMap, you'll quickly be able to understand, geoprocessing models, Python scripting, toolboxes, and many of the concepts are similar. We've hopefully just improved the way that you interact with the application. As I mentioned, Python is there. That's great, since Amy gave us a good example of how Python's being used in the real world. And all the geoprocessing tools will be there. We're enhancing the Model Builder experience, but Model Builder will be there. We're also introducing a new task assistant, which you'll be able to author and create workflows or use some out-of-the-box workflows to help guide you through some more advanced processes. We're looking at improving the help system. When I first started with ESRI, we used to write books and then turn those books into help systems and then try to publish those help systems on the web and put them on the DVDs. This time we're starting from scratch, and we're looking at writing an interactive kind of task-based help system. That help system will be available as a separate install, which means it's going to greatly reduce the size of the application install. You can install the help system if you want it, or you can just refer to the web help. Organizations will also have the option to install the help system in a central location and have all of its desktop users just connect to that, and then update that one machine as needed. The install for the application is a web-based install. From ArcGIS.com, you'll be able to install it. It installs much faster than previous versions of ArcGIS. And there's an automatic update utility that you can turn on or off and control, but it'll basically notify you when there's an update or an enhancement or a fix to one of your issues. We're also changing the customization and not just going to give you all of ArcObjects and the complications of ArcObjects, but we're introducing a new .NET API for customizing the application, adding your own buttons or enhancing the user interface. We'll be following the add-in model that's there now in ArcGIS 10, but there'll be a new .NET API based on .NET 4. So some of the questions that I usually get when we're starting to talk about this application or show it to people is they start to wonder, is this a replacement for ArcMap? Well, it's not a direct replacement. Pro is an additional application to ArcGIS for desktop, so you'll still get the versions of ArcMap, Catalog, Scene, and Globe. However, our focus is on this new application, and over time, we hope that all of your workflows will be doable and even be done better and more efficiently and effectively in ArcGIS Pro, so that you can make the choice to stop using ArcMap and to only use the Pro application. But we're going to continue to support and maintain and release new versions of ArcMap as we release ArcGIS Pro. Both applications run side by side. You can import your map documents or layer files into ArcGIS Pro. The layouts come over, all the data connections, and you'll be able to then edit and add to them. Of course, if you save them, you'll be saving that map and that as a ArcGIS project. You'll still have the original MXD that you've imported, but there is no backwards compatibility from Pro to ArcMap, because there's just new things, and the 64-bit architecture is only in ArcGIS Pro. So the schedule here, before we can jump into any questions or other things, is that we'll have a public beta in the spring, and so second quarter of 2014. You might be able to hopefully get something out around the CalGIS conference. That could be a good benchmark for us. And then in the second half of the year will be the first release of the application. Our plan is to have 3 releases a year. We have the built-in capability to update the application more often, but we're committed, and we've updated our development process and how we are releasing software so that the Pro application, we can be much more responsive to your enhancement request. But also, we didn't want to wait for the first release until Pro did everything that ArcMap did. We want to get it out there, get your feedback, have that transitional period where both applications are available to you, and then we'll incrementally update ArcGIS Pro 2 to 3 times, maybe even more, over the next few years. Usually then people ask me well, what's the deprecation plan or retirement plan for ArcMap? And I can confidently tell you that there is not a plan. Not because we're not thinking about it, but because we have no plans to retire ArcMap at this time. It will continue to be a released product and will serve its purpose. Many people are using custom solutions developed on top of ArcMap. They'll continue to use ArcMap even once Pro's released for those solutions until there's a better or comparable solution on top of ArcGIS Pro. So we're going to have a time for many years to come where ESRI has 5 applications as part of ArcGIS for Desktop: ArcMap, ArcCatalog, ArcScene, ArcGlobe, and the new ArcGIS Pro. So I know that was a lot of information in a short period of time, but I wanted to save time for questions because there's usually questions that come up about this new topic when we start talking about such a new release from ESRI. So Jeff, if there isn't questions, I can make up some questions.
Well, there are some questions. We have about 8 or 9 of them so far.
All right.
The first one was a question kind of right at the beginning for ArcGIS Desktop as it sits now. Somebody hasn't installed 10.2 yet. Should they wait for 10.2.1 before they do that?
So if you have not moved to 10.2, then I would say just wait until the week of January 7th and download 10.2.1 if you're a desktop user. Absolutely. Just wait in a couple more weeks. Enjoy your Christmas and come back from your Christmas break. The week of January 7th is when the download will be available, and then just move to 10.2.1.
Okay. Now you answered the questions about the beta. So you expect to have a public beta up sometime in the second quarter, right? Or is kind of your target?
Yes, that's the plan. We will, I'll go ahead and say it because this is a special group. We will have a early adopter program that will start in February, actually. And we've had some holistic events. For those that maybe don't know what that term means for ESRI, is that we have a holistic testing lab here in Redlands and also in DC and one in Europe, where we invite customers to come, bring their data, bring their workflows, and spend several days with us and basically do their job while the development team gets to watch and be a part of it. But you do this on unreleased software.
Interesting.
So we'll be having we've had a few of those already for ArcGIS Pro. We're going to have another one in January and February, and probably another one in March. There's only about 15-20 people at a time can do that, and we will have an early adopter release of the software. So if someone's really interested in getting access, prior to the spring, let me know and we can talk about that.
Okay.
The good thing that this application is a separate application. So let's say you move to 10.2.1 in January and you wanted to use the beta of this, that's okay. You just keep 10.2.1 installed, and the beta is just the beta of the Pro app. It's not a beta of ArcMap. It's just the beta of the Pro app, and that can be installed on your same machine that you currently have 10.2.1 on, or 9.3.1, or whatever.
Okay. Let's get a few more questions here. Will ArcGIS Pro be available at the home version of the product?
There will be a version it will be available at the
Okay.
home. Yep. And ArcGIS Pro, I'll say too, that it'll be the same 3 levels that you have now: basic, standard, and advanced. So if your ArcGIS for Desktop product is a standard level, then you'll get the Pro app at the standard level.
Okay. Yeah, we had somebody comment here that they're still using XP at work and they would love to be able to test it at home when it gets to that point.
There you
Okay,
go.
here's another question. Can or when do you think it will, can ArcGIS Pro replace ArcMap completely? When do you have expectations of that?
Yeah, we don't have a schedule for that. for a couple of reasons. Is there's functionality in ArcMap that we've already decided is not going to move across. We're not going to bring the coverage tools over. ArcScan, there's just no market demand for ArcScan right now. So there's some things that will never come across, and we've got a long list of things that we do want to implement, but we're kind of working through that, and it'll be just based on the feedback and the usage of our customers to that will drive that.
Okay. Here's a question. Does the new .NET API utilize ArcObjects?
Tricky question, and I know what they're getting at. So under the hoods, there is still some ArcObject and as part of ArcGIS Pro. However, we are not exposing ArcObjects to the third-party developer who's customizing and extending the application. So your ArcObjects code now will not transition to Pro. You would have to rewrite your customizations using the new .NET API.
Okay. Somebody asked a question here. Does ArcGIS Pro need is there a 3D extension to it, or is it just built in?
So the 3D viewing is built in. Everybody will get a 3D viewing without the extension. The extension will truly be what it's always been called, the 3D analyst or 3D analysis. So the extension will give you the ability to do 3D analysis. The 3D viewing everybody gets at the basic level.
Okay. Here's another one. Will solutions like local government data models and tools be ported over to ArcGIS Pro at release or staged over time?
Great. Yes, great question. Yes, we are working. Those solution template teams are working closely with us so that their models and their templates and their work, they will have ArcGIS Pro versions. Our goal is for the ones that we're focusing on are local government, emergency management, military, and then utilities. Those are the four that we're focusing on for the first release to have solution templates in place second half of 2014.
Okay. Here's another one. ArcGIS for desktop Linux? Question mark. So I think what they're asking is there in the works Linux version of any of this?
No, there is no plans for everything I've talked about. The current ArcGIS desktop and the new Pro app are Windows only.
Okay.
For our non-Windows applications, ESRI is working on other apps. These other apps are not for the professional GIS users. Of course, we all can use them, but these are things like the ArcGIS application, which is available on iOS and Android, the collector application, iOS, Android, and then we're going to introduce next year, I'll just go ahead and say it, a new version of ArcGIS Explorer that will be on ArcGIS, that will be on Android, iOS, Mac OS 10, and potentially Linux.
Okay. Next question is, when do you think there'll be... Sorry if I have some background noise, some noise coming out of our packing house here. When can you expect to see training courses for ArcGIS Pro?
The training department has a goal to have classes available within 30 days of the release of the product.
Okay, within 30 days.
So this and within 30 days, and that would be for the instructor-led.
Okay.
We hope to have online classes available at launch, at release.
Okay. Here's another question. Is ArcGIS Pro compatible with Windows Server 2008 64-bit?
No, not Windows 8. Sorry. No, what version did you say? 2008?
Windows Server 2008 64-bit.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're running our desktop software on a Windows Server machine, it would need to be Windows Server 2012 64-bit or higher.
Okay. Let's see here. By the way, there's several comments on how valuable this has been to people. I think there was a lot of confusion last year at the user conference. Things kind of left up in the air, and this has really helped me too understand where things are going. Let's see here. Somebody asked, will models in ArcMap work in Pro?
The plan is that models will migrate over with little to no changes. Yeah.
Fantastic. Let me ask you.
We are updating. Yeah, we do want to make quite a bit of updates to the modeling experience. You know, the actual canvas that you drag and drop your bubbles and hook them up to and actually do your modeling on. That's why there may be a couple minor tweaks for the visual display, but the actual processing of models, we do not want to break that.
Okay. Well, let me ask a quick question, just for sake of me understanding. I kind of understood the idea of coming up with a Pro application because the world of GIS has changed dramatically in the last 10, 15 years. And, you know, I remember the day that ArcMap came out and the whole world changed from ArcView 3 or 7 or whatever we were at it for Info 7. How difficult is it when you're trying to put together these tools to deal with a large installed base of software and a large existing customer base? So what kind of challenges does that put in front of you?
Well, it's not easy. We have users that are on lots of different versions of ArcGIS for desktop, and many of our organizations, we realize that just because Redlands says something and releases something doesn't mean that you can just instantly move to that new version. So we have tried not to just make radical changes for the sake of change. You know, your comment that kind of the world changed when ArcMap was released, I think other people would say the world didn't change, that they continued to use ArcView 3, and yeah, maybe they had ArcView 3 for 80% of their work, and then eventually, as they kept installing, maybe as they got a new machine, of course they put ArcView 3 on it, and maybe ArcView 9, and then you know, they had to do a new project, and they decided just to do the whole thing in ArcView 9 and ArcView 9.1, and they stopped. All of a sudden, they stopped using ArcView 3. So we don't want to try to force people out of ArcMap right now. We will force you out of ArcView 3.
But, I know somebody who still has operational stuff running on ArcView 3 in their office. So it works just fine for them. So.
Yeah, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But for many people that it is broke, they need 64-bit. They need a better experience. They need, you know, in the future they're going to need to be able to edit in 3D or do 3D analysis. They need stuff that we don't even know that's coming yet, and or we still got to figure out what they need. And that's where this Pro application gives us a new framework to be able to do that.
There was one other question here that came up just the last couple minutes. What version of Python will the new version of ArcGIS ArcPy use?
My Python, I kind of get it mixed up here. Current version of Python is 2.7, I believe, in ArcGIS. Does any of my Python friends want to correct me on that?
I believe.
Is it 2.
I think it's 2.7 something, and somebody asked the question: Is it going to be 2.7 or 3.3? It's
going to be 3.
It's going to be 3. Okay.
We're going to move up to the 3.x series for Python.
Fantastic. Are there any other questions out there? Because we're over time and we need to let Rob get back to the hard work of making us good software. Is how this tie into the tiered licensing is the question. Is this developed at one level, or are different tools available depending on your software level?
Yeah, so there'll be 3 levels. Well, there already are 3 levels of ArcGIS for desktop: basic, standard, or advanced. Or sometimes I still like to say ArcView, ArcEditor, ArcInfo. So the Pro application will know what level you're at, and you will have more functionality at the advanced over standard or basic. It will be similar, so the same type of things you can do at basic ArcMap you'll be able to do in basic Pro. We're not going to make any radical changes or take anything away in terms of license level.
Okay.
So it is still the tiered approach.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. There's a couple other questions. Maybe I'll forward them on to you at some other point in time. But we need to wrap things up. I do appreciate your time. I'm going to turn my camera back on here. I appreciate your time today, Rob, and I think that all of us look forward to hearing more as the year progresses. I hope that there was a few people here asking questions about wanting to get involved on the testers, be a tester or as a beta tester, or possibly even earlier than that. So if anybody wants to forward a question to Rob directly, or I'm assuming they can, or if you want to send me a message at calgisconference@gmail.com. I'll take and bundle all those up and send them to Rob so he doesn't get inundated with lots of individual emails, if you'd prefer that.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Once again, remind everybody to get out there and register for the conference. If budget's going to be tight, register before December 31st. If budgets are free and you have lots of money to spend, register after December 31st, and the conference will have a little bit more money to spend on nice breaks and cookies and all that kind of stuff for you. And any other questions, please get in touch with us. The next webinar will be January 17th. Our speaker list is still up in the air a little bit on that one, so go to calgis.org and you'll be able to see all that information. Somebody asked for the email address one more time. It's calgisconference@gmail.com. And once again, the call for papers is ending very soon, so everybody jump in there and get their stuff in. Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you so much, Amy, and we appreciate your time today. And I'll let you go with that.